Most people think they know this face. A smiling mascot, a killer animatronic, the monster of Willy's Wonderland. But every investigation starts with a question. And the deeper I dug into this case, the more I realized this story wasn't about a robot. It was about something much worse. Because before Willy Weasel became a monster, someone had to create him. And before he became an animatronic, he was something else entirely. Something human. Every animatronic has a story. Some tragic, some terrifying, and some should have stayed buried. I'm Dievold, and welcome to Animatronic Origins. Tonight's case file, Willy Weasel. Let's begin. If you've seen Willy's Wonderland, then you already know Willy. He's a giant weasel mascot that gives the restaurant its name. He's the face on the posters, he's the star of the birthday parties, and by the end of the film, he's also the final animatronic standing. But here's what's interesting. Willy spends most of the movie in the background, while other animatronics attack first. Other animatronics claim victims, other animatronics create chaos. Yet somehow, Willy is the character that everyone remembers. So I started asking myself the simple question. Why? What makes Willy different? Why did he become the face of the franchise? And to answer that, we need to go back to the very beginning. Not the beginning of the story, the beginning of the movie itself. One of the most surprising discoveries in this investigation is that Willy's Wonderland wasn't originally called Willy's Wonderland at all. Writer G.O. Parsons originally developed the project under a different title, Wally's Wonderland. The screenplay gained attention after appearing on Hollywood's Bloodlist, a collection of notable unproduced screenplays. And eventually, the project attracted an unexpected supporter, Nicolas Cage. Not only would Cage star in the film, he would also become one of its producers. Without Nicolas Cage, there's a very real chance none of us would have ever heard of Willy Weasel at all. But that's where things get interesting, because around this time, another question started to appear online. Was Willy's Wonderland inspired by Five Nights at Freddy's? After all, both feature murderous mascots, abandoned family entertainment centers, and animatronics that come to life. The similarities are obvious, but according to both writer G.O. Parsons and director Kevin Lewis, the answer isn't that simple. Both have publicly stated that Willy's Wonderland was not intended to be a Five Nights at Freddy's copy, instead pointing toward influences like horror films, roadside attractions, and retro family entertainment centers. Now, whether you agree with that or not, I'll leave that up to you. But as investigators, we follow the evidence, not assumptions. And the evidence tells us one thing. Willy Weasel may share DNA with mascot horror, but his story is very much his own. And that's where our case takes a dark turn, because inside the world of Willy's Wonderland, Willy wasn't created by a screenwriter, he was created by a killer. At first glance, Willy's Wonderland looked like every family entertainment center in America. Arcade machines, birthday parties, pizza, mascots. The kind of place parents brought their kids on weekends. The kind of place that was supposed to feel safe. And for a while, that's exactly what it appeared to be. But appearances can be deceptive, especially when they're designed that way. As I started researching the history of Willy's Wonderland, I noticed something strange. People kept disappearing. Not dozens at first, not enough to make national headlines, just enough to create questions. Questions that no one seemed eager to answer. Because according to the story told in the film, families were entering Willy's Wonderland and some of them never came out. Think about that for a second. Imagine bringing your child to a birthday party, walking into what looks like a harmless family restaurant, and never making it home. That's the reality beneath the colorful mascot costumes. Every investigation eventually arrives at the same question. Who benefits? Who was in control? Who had access? And in this case, all roads lead to the same man, Jerry Robert Willis. If you've only watched Willy's Wonderland once, there's a good chance you barely remember his name. But without Jerry Robert Willis, there is no Willy Weasel, no restaurant, no animatronics, no murders, no mystery. According to the story, Willis founded Willy's Wonderland. To the public, he was a successful businessman, a local celebrity, the smiling face behind a beloved attraction. But according to the film's backstory, that image was a lie. Because Jerry Robert Willis wasn't working alone. Over time, he surrounded himself with a group of equally violent individuals. Together, they became known as the Crazy Eight. And behind the cheerful music and colorful mascots, they were hiding something horrific. The restaurant wasn't simply a place of entertainment. According to Liv Hawthorne's account in the film, it had become a hunting ground. Victims were allegedly lured into a private area known as the Super Happy Fun Room, a name that sounds harmless, almost childish, but according to the story, it was anything but, because many of the people who entered that room never left. Eventually, the disappearances became impossible to ignore. The evidence started piling up. Witnesses came forward, questions grew louder, and for the first time, Jerry Robert Willis was running out of places to hide. Law enforcement was closing in. The walls were closing in, and according to the film, Willis knew it. The murders, the disappearances, the secrets hidden inside Willy's Wonderland. Everything was about to be exposed. But what happens next would transform Willy's Wonderland from a crime scene into something much stranger. Something that shouldn't have been possible. Something that would give birth to Willy Weasel. By this point in our investigation, the case seemed fairly straightforward. A serial killer, a group of accomplices, a restaurant built on lies, and a police investigation rapidly closing in. If this was a normal true crime story, this would be where it would end. The arrests would be made, the killers would stand trial, and Willy's Wonderland would become another dark chapter in history. But according to the story told in the film, that's not what happened. According to Liv Hawthorne's account, Jerry Robert Willis and the other members of the Crazy Eight made a decision. They would never allow themselves to be captured. They would never face justice and never answer for what they had done. Instead, they turned to something far more disturbing. A ritual. One final act designed to preserve themselves forever. Now it's important to remember something. We're no longer discussing proven criminal history. We're discussing events as they've been presented within the story of Willy's Wonderland. And according to that story, the ritual worked. The film states that the members of the Crazy Eight transferred their souls into the restaurant's animatronic mascots. Jerry Robert Willis became Willy Weasel. The killers became machines. And Willy's Wonderland changed forever. Think about how strange that transformation really is. Before this moment, Willy Weasel didn't exist. Not as a character, not as a monster, not as a legend. There was only Jerry Robert Willis, a human being hiding behind a business. But after the ritual, the man disappeared and the mascot remained. Hey guys, Studio Devolt here for a second to tell you about today's sponsor, Weekly. Now if you're anything like me, your life is probably scattered across about 17 different places right now. You've got tasks in your notes app, ideas in your WhatsApp messages you send to yourself at 2 in the morning, random screenshots you'll definitely forget to look at again, 27 browser tabs you swear are important, and somehow a sticky note on your desk that's been there since March. You know that feeling when you know you wrote something down, you just can't remember where. That's exactly why I started using Weekly. Instead of trying another massive productivity system, Weekly is just one place to keep your life together. Your tasks, your notes, your reminders, your budgeting, even your AI assistant. Everything lives in one place, so you're not constantly trying to remember where you saved something. And unlike other apps like Notion, opening Weekly doesn't feel like you've accidentally started a second job. It's simple, it's clean, and it actually helps you feel more organized instead of less. If you'd like to check it out for yourself, head over to myweekly.co.za, use code E.I.E animations for 15% off. Subscriptions start at just $5 per month, which is about 20% of what you'd be paying for another app. Thanks again to Weekly for supporting the channel. Now let's get back to the video. This is the moment I would consider the true birth of Willy Weasel. Not when the mascot costume was designed, not when the restaurant opened, and not when the first child walked through the front door. The real origins begin here. The moment the killer stopped being a man and became a symbol. Because from this point forward, every person who looked at Willy Weasel saw something different. Children saw a mascot. Customers saw a character. But beneath that painted smile, according to the film, was Jerry Robert Willis. Still watching, still waiting, still hungry. And that's where our investigation runs into its first major mystery. If Jerry Robert Willis became Willy Weasel, what happened to the others? Were they still thinking? Were they still planning? Still aware of who they were once? Or had they become something else entirely? This film never gives us a definitive answer. What we do know is that the killings didn't stop. Even after the restaurant closed, even after the police investigation, even after the world believed the nightmare was over, the animatronics remained and they were still killing. Most horror stories end when the villain dies. This one begins there, because while Jerry Robert Willis may have escaped justice, something even more dangerous survived him: the idea of Willy Weasel. A smiling face, a friendly mascot, a monster hidden in plain sight. And over the years, that monster would continue feeding. Not because nobody knew, but because somebody made a choice. And that choice would reveal the darkest secret in this entire investigation. The town of Hazeville knew exactly what was happening, and they let it continue. By this point, you'd expect the story to be over. The killers were gone, the restaurant was closed, the truth had finally been exposed. Case closed, right? Not exactly, because according to the film, the killings continued. Even after Jerry Robert Lewis was gone, even after Willy's Wonderland shut its doors, people were still dying, and no one could figure out how to stop it. The possessed mascots remained trapped inside Willy's Wonderland. And according to Sheriff Lund's account, they were still killing anyone unfortunate enough to enter. This is where things became complicated, because now the town faced a choice: destroy the animatronics or survive them. And according to the story, they chose survival. During one of the biggest revelations in the entire film, Sheriff Lund explains what happened next. The citizens of Hazeville entered into an agreement, a horrifying agreement. Instead of continuing to fight the animatronics, they began feeding them. Travelers, drifters, outsiders, people passing through town, individuals nobody would immediately miss. When a suitable victim arrived, their vehicle would mysteriously become unavailable, repairs would be required, and a night at Willy's Wonderland would suddenly seem unavoidable. And by morning, another sacrifice had been made. Think about it. This wasn't one bad decision. This wasn't a single moment of panic. According to the story, this continued 4 years. Let's stop and look at our suspects. Suspect number 1, Willy Weasel, possessed serial killer, responsible for multiple murders, clearly guilty. Suspect number 2, the Crazy 8, also guilty, no debate there. But then we arrive at suspect number 3, the town itself. And this is where the investigation changes. Because unlike Willy, the townspeople had a choice. They weren't possessed, they weren't trapped, they weren't cursed. According to the film, they knowingly allowed innocent people to die again and again and again. No one understands this better than Liv Hawthorne, because according to the story, Liv's parents became part of the sacrifice system. They weren't random victims. They were casualties of a community willing to protect itself at any cost. And that raises a difficult question. How many victims belong to Willy Weasel, and how many victims belong to Hazeville? Because without fresh sacrifices, the animatronics may never have survived as long as they did.
Hey, I just wanted to tell you that we have a brand new animatronic game out. Help Sam fight evil animatronics, eat pizza, and save Animatronic Island. Available now to all Patreon members. Animatronicisland.com. Awesome, now back to the video.
When people talk about Willy's Wonderland, they usually focus on the monsters, the mascots, the jump scares, the violence. But after reviewing the evidence, I think the most frightening part of the story is something else. The people, ordinary people, who convinced themselves that sacrificing strangers was acceptable. People who justified evil because it kept them safe. And honestly, that's far scarier than any animatronic, because monsters are expected to act like monsters, but people are not. For years, the system worked. Victims arrived, sacrifices were made, the animatronics fed, and Hazeville survived. Then one night, a stranger rolled into town, a man with no known name. No known history, no known fear. And for the first time in years, the people of Hazeville sent the wrong victim into Willy's Wonderland. Every long-running mystery eventually encounters something unexpected. A witness, a mistake, a loose thread. Something that changes everything. For Hazeville, that something arrived in the form of a drifter. A man known only as the janitor. And to this day, we know remarkably little about him. That's not me withholding information. That's genuinely all we know. The film never reveals his name, never explains his past, never tells us where he comes from, or why he possesses the skills he does. In fact, one of the strangest things about Willy's Wonderland is how little it explains its hero. And I think that's intentional, because mysteries are often more powerful than answers. According to the story, Sheriff Lund sends the janitor to Willy's Wonderland for the same reason countless victims had been sent before him: to die. Simple as that. The town believed they were feeding another sacrifice to the animatronics, another outsider, another disposable victim. But this time, they were wrong. Very wrong. One by one, the creatures that had terrorized Hazeville for years began to fall. Ozzy the ostrich, gone. Gus the gorilla, gone. Artie the alligator, gone. Siren Sarah, gone. Nighty Night, gone. Tito Turtle, gone. Cammy Chameleon, gone. Years of fear, years of sacrifices, years of death. And one man dismantled it in a single night. Eventually, only one remained. Willy Weasel. The mascot, the face of the restaurant, the vessel of Jerry Robert Willis, the figure whose shadow had loomed over this entire investigation. If Willy truly was the heart of Willy's Wonderland, this is where the story had to end. According to the film, it did. The janitor defeats Willy, the animatronic is destroyed, and for the first time in years, the nightmare finally ends. But before we close this case, we need to answer the question we started with. Was Willy Weasel the real victim? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Yes, of course he was. He was possessed by Jerry Robert Willis, he then murdered innocent people, terrorized Hazeville, case closed, right? Not quite. After reviewing the evidence, this is my conclusion. Willy Weasel was guilty. The Crazy Eight are guilty. There's absolutely no question about it. But this investigation uncovered something unexpected. The true horror of Willy's Wonderland wasn't just the monsters. It was the people who allowed them to continue. For years, the citizens of Hazeville chose convenience over courage. They sacrificed innocent people to protect themselves. And that decision created more victims than Willy ever could have done alone. So, was Willy Weasel the villain? Yes, but he wasn't the only one. And that's what makes this story so disturbing. Because the most dangerous thing in Willy's Wonderland wasn't a possessed animatronic. It was the willingness of ordinary people to accept evil when confronting it became inconvenient. Every animatronic has a story. Some tragic, some terrifying, and some should have stayed buried. I'm Diovold, and this has been Animatronic Origins. But our work isn't done yet, because next time we'll be opening another case file. And trust me, this one gets even stranger. Did you enjoy this video? What animatronic should we cover next? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, hit the like button, subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and as always, stay awesome, stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one.